Yeah, just a little bit cold. It's a little bit warm, but it's not much warm. Sorry? It's a little bit warm, but not huge enough.
It's okay. Whenever I think of starting with the Heart Sutra, it feels like, do you know the stuff, The Simpsons, The Simpsons? So it feels like the Heart Sutra with clouds and
No.
All right.
But I did go to a concert.
Mm-hmm.
I went to a club the only time as a monk. He was to see this guy. Anyway, what is not on his record, because his recording company let him have it, is his rockabilly Heart Sutra. He's got rockabilly.
So who's that?
Bluegrass.
Bluegrass. Never heard of him.
It was the first prison chaplain in San Francisco in the 60s. He's doing a job on cool. Bluegrass. Because I heard of bluegrass. River shape there.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start with the Heart Sutra of The Simpsons. So the Arya Triple Gem, thus they heard one time, the Bhagavan was dwelling on a massive Rajas mountain in Rajgira together with a great community of monks and a great community of Bodhisattvas. The Bhagavan was absorbed in concentration on categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara: Hashidama, son of lineage, strength, wishing to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom. And the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra: Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon like this correctly and repeatedly. Aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, composition, factor, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness without characteristic and produce unceased sentence, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no composition, factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element and so on up to including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extension of ignorance and so on up to including no aging and death and no extension of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, Bodhisattvas rely on the dwelling perfection of wisdom, man without obscuration, without fear, having completely passed beyond error to reach the end point of Nirvana. All the Buddhas indwell in 3 times, also manifestly completely awakened to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of the great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as the truth, since it's not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared: Tayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisattva. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in fine perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended Bodhisattva Mahasapa, Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the fine perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated, even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan thus spoken the word Shankara, Putra, the Bodhisattva Mahasapa, Arya Avalokiteshvara, surrounding in the entirety along the walls of houses and Masuras and Kanta, overjoyed and highly praised, as spoken by the Bhagavan. Sangye Chodan Soki Chonam La Chanchu Badi Dani Yapsushi Dagi Jinsogi Betsonagi Dola Penchi Sangye Topash Chodan Soki Chonam La Chanchu Badi Dani Yapsuchi Dagi Jinsogi Betsonagi Dola Penchi Sangye Topash Sangye Chodan Soki Chonam La Chanchu Badu Dani Yapsuchi Dagi Jinsogi Betsonagi Drola Penchi Sangye Dropasho.
What did you say there, Choki? I mean,
About?
But because we're not listening to teachers, I guess we're contemplating the teacher. What did you say in that part, Choki?
Okay, so what I say, I'll put it on the screen. So here in the third line that says, from the accumulation I gather through listening to the Dhamma. So sometimes I say I just do different stuff, as they say in professional language. So sometimes I say Dagi Jinso Gibesonange just by my practice of generosity and so forth. Sometimes I say by my explaining the Dhamma and so forth. Dagi Chushi Gibesonange. So
that's what we said there.
Yeah. I do different stuff. I mix it up.
Thank you.
No worries. I throw another snag on the barbie.
Pardon?
I throw another snag on the barbie.
Yes. Good on you.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
All right. Good Tuesday. Yeah, good Tuesday. So I think that probably all of us are a little bit tired from the last few days of in Geshe-la pushing up to the max in preparing up for His Honour's birthday celebration and then the birthday celebration itself. I guess that Geshe-la's pushing up to the max worked well because I think that it was a successful event. No disaster crisis. The tanker did not arrive in time, but I guess that if everything works perfectly, it's a bit weird, isn't it?
Well, we had plan B.
Well, plan B and plan B worked. Actually, it was a double plan B, double whammy.
Exactly.
You know, 2 tankers rather than 1.
Yes, that's exactly right. So, I mean, it's all right if plan A doesn't work out as long as you have plan B.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much for everyone.
And thank you too, Yaki. I was so grateful when you pleaded to allow us to come back to us and visit us for the first time, make sure we're first on the list. I really was very pleased that you took that opportunity to say that. So thank you so much for your forthrightness.
Well, I would have liked to say, I'm not sure that I would have liked to say, but I'll say it anyway, that, I was happy to twist his arm for.
Yes.
But probably, it probably works, the way that it works is that basically whatever works for Lama Zopa Rinpoche would be the first center that he visits. But it'd be awesome if he visited Chimrezek Institute as soon as the situation makes it possible. No, I'm almost tempted to say as soon as the situation goes back to normal, but I don't think that it will be any back to normal in the next few years. It seems that the initial onset of COVID-19 gave the impression that, maybe in a month or 2, things will go back to normal. And the more the world is affected by this, the more it seems to me, at least personally, I'm not sure that I'm the correct person to talk to, but that we're going to all the world is going to recede into a massive recession, depression, what have you. It will have probably an effect that will be experienced for the next few years and beyond that. Probably it will be also a time to, I guess, change the way that we've been doing things as human beings in society. So who knows what's going to end up at the other side of COVID-19. Siddha Rinpoche gave teachings online about a week or two ago. And at the end of the teaching, he gave like a prediction that was a little bit grim. He said that, well, first of all, there's going to be return of COVID-19, and it said that, and then there's going to be something worse. I don't know if it's just kind of a matter of speech or whether kind of.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say. What was his prediction, Shirley?
Well, the next one was famine, which WHO already,
Yeah.
since it said famine will come after COVID. And the one after that, which is the end of the world as we know, is when there's worldwide
Yes.
war.
Yeah.
Well, actually, kind of, those things actually work hand in hand. You have a major disaster, then famine, then people fighting for resources. Unfortunately, it's inevitable. I mean, sometimes, when I start to look at this situation, I see how sometimes self-centered I am, in a sense that, I start off with thinking, how does it affect my plans for the next few years? So I start thinking of how it affects my plan to travel to India, to travel to Tibet, to travel to China, and kind of I lament my inability to do that. But actually, I guess it's a first world problem, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely first world problem, and yeah, definitely.
It's easy for us to then have to make a plan B too. Like if you can't do plan A, I think you can do long-term retreat or something.
Could be. So Matt is asking which Rinpoche. It was Tai Situ Rinpoche, and the teaching or the talk that he gave is online. It's in English, so it's towards the end of his teaching that he said. What is our responsibility in the face of this crisis to help preserve the Dharma through disaster? I guess that our responsibility, I think that in general, is to help ourselves and others in the best way we can. I think that kind of when you think of the different ways that we can be of help to others, and on the short term, we can be of help to others in providing them or helping them out with whatever they need in terms of food, day-to-day necessities or other expertise that we could share with others. But I think that on the long term, when we think of how we can be of ultimate benefit to others, it would be only through the Dharma. So I think that it's not that we have to choose either this or that. We can try to do both. Okay. So in our responsibility, sorry, Paul, I'll get back to your question. I think that our responsibility in the big scheme of things, particularly here when we study Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life, is to think of how we can be of benefit to everyone, human beings and non-human beings on the long term. And the way to do that would be to reach Buddhahood and to be able to teach Dharma to others when they can study the Dharma. In the short term, in the interim, and particularly since you, Paul, are involved with quite a lot of environmental projects and, environmental warrior, this is also part of our responsibility to, I guess, that we can think about it from so many different perspectives, not only help others, but also, I guess, make sure that none of those neoliberalist way of thinking creeps even deeper into our society. The society completely breaks into social division, people not caring about each other and so forth, everything that comes with neoliberalism. So anyway, that's a responsibility. But I think that we also need to make sure that we cover some things also today with the truth. So what I thought of doing today was to look at 2 or 3 more of the secondary offenses of the Bodhisattva vow, and then to look at giving. So before we look at the secondary offenses, I just wanted to say something about giving. As you know, we said before in our discussions of this material, there is no chapter that is dedicated just to teaching the perfection of generosity. So today in Geshe-la's session, we started to look into how to give away our body possessions and roots of virtue, which is normally included within the perfection of generosity. So I thought of adding some more details about the perfection of generosity today, and probably also in the next few days. And if you guys here and also at home have anything else to add, then that would be awesome. So let's begin first of all with the next 2 or 3 secondary offenses. So we've covered the first 7. Remember that they came, as it says here, the above 7 secondary offenses are incompatible with generosity, which includes the giving of Dharma and virtue. The 46 secondary offenses are divided into 7 groups. So there are the first 6 groups, which are speaking about offenses which are incompatible or contrary to the practice of the 6 perfections, a perfection each. And then the last group of 12 misdeeds or 12 offenses that deal with things that are contrary to working for the sake of others, benefiting others, or you can say gathering virtuous actions, virtues for the benefit of others, and so forth. So we've covered the first group. Let's look at the second group, which deals with things that are incompatible with ethical discipline. So the first one says, if out of bitterness, anger, or laziness, you neglect or ignore someone with lapsed ethics on account of his or her having committed an act with no intervening period, which means one of those 5 actions, we spoke about them before: killing your own mother and father, killing an arhat, drawing blood from a Buddha with a malevolent intent, and creating a rift in the Sangha. So having so out of bitterness, anger, or laziness, neglecting them or ignoring them, or incurring an ethical rude, or towards someone that has incurred an ethical rude downfall, it is a secondary offense of neglecting those with lapsed ethics. So I think that probably we can speak about it in relation to 2 groups of people. There are those who act in a very negative way. So I think that we can probably include in our mind not only those that have committed one of the 5 heinous actions of killing one's own mother and father and so forth, but someone that we probably see in our society as being someone that is totally evil, totally bad. Having a lack of compassion to that person, not regarding them with compassion, not regarding them with a sense of care. It seems that this is what this section is speaking of, neglecting those with lapsed ethics. But also the second person included in that section is someone that incurred an ethical root downfall. So it could be a layperson that has the lay vow, right? So if they've made a commitment to abstain from one of the 5 things, killing, stealing, and so forth, and they have violated the ethical discipline, we become bitter with them. We look down on them, we dismiss them. Basically, it seems that it's an attitude that is bereft of compassion or sense of care. This is what this secondary offense is. I think that probably more strikingly, if we have the same attitude with respect to an ordained person that either have transgressed the ethical discipline or go to the point where they have completely broken the vow. It's actually quite interesting in the Tibetan tradition. I think that when you hear stories of how disrobing was not very common in Tibet prior to the Chinese occupation, I wouldn't say not uncommon, but it was still considered to be a really bad thing. There are stories that I read before about those that have broken the vow or that were found to discovered to have acts of unchastity and so forth, they're were thrown into rivers, or they were, or completely became outcast by society. So it was considered to be something that is quite bad to behave in a way that in which you've broken your vow. And now, since Tibetan society is such an inclusive and accepting society, in a sense that someone is breaking the vow, giving away the vow. Of course, some people say, alas, it's a pity and so forth, but they're still pretty much included in Tibetan society. I have a friend at Sydney that was a monk at Namgyal Monastery, His Honour's monastery. Now, monks from His Honour's monastery used to travel quite a lot around the world in preparation for His Honour's Kalachakra empowerments or other visits. They were doing Zen mandalas or other rituals and so forth. And I think that because they've traveled quite a lot, and because they were quite, rich monastery, I'd say, and maybe also because the study program was not that strong in Namgyal Monastery, many of them ended up disrobing. I think it was one of those monasteries that were famous for monks disrobing. But anyway, I have a friend in Sydney that disrobed and comes from that monastery, and he said that a few years ago, a group of ex-monks from Namgyal Monastery got together, and they were the one that sponsored a long life puja for His Honours at Dharamsala, and that was not totally widely accepted and appreciated. So I thought that it's like such a massive change in Tibetan society. Before, the people like that were totally outcast, and now it's pretty much accepted by society. So this is what happens in Tibetan society, and I think that also with us as monastic community here, I think that over the years we've seen people disrobing. I think that in some sense, I think that it's much harder to disrobe than to become ordained. Sometimes when I think of how difficult it would be to decide that you cannot do it anymore and that you need to give it up, or that you want to give it up, I think that I'd say that probably for most people, it's a decision that is harder than becoming ordained. So rather than kind of looking down on someone like that, or kind of distancing yourself or becoming a bit critical, it's actually, I guess it's our responsibility to support someone like that as much as we can in their emotional difficulties, if they're open to discussion or support.
I think the karma, it comes down to karma, doesn't it? The karma for being ordained seems to run out.
Well, it's like, I think that sometimes I've had this explanation before, this way of expressing it before, that's someone's karma for being a monastic has run out. But I think that's it's like, yeah, well, we can create karma. It's like, it's when you say that my karma ran out, it seems that kind of you're blaming something that was not within your power. But it's.
Not if you understand karma. I mean, karma is you are no longer creating the merit.
Well.
So you often find these people, they leave the monastic scene for whatever reason. They go and live on their own, or they have had struggles. Because it's one thing that when I was contemplating ordination, I was encouraged to talk to people who had disrobed and to find out their reasons for disrobing. So you sort of knew some of the reasons, some of the obstacles and stuff. You often find it was around things like no longer feeling comfortable within the community for a number of reasons. It's never just one specific.
I think that probably when people start to decide to disrobe, I think that normally, if you ask them why, then there would be maybe one reason or maybe two reasons that would come up. But I think that often it's a combination of reasons where people feel unhappy. It's basically mental unhappiness. And we all experience mental unhappiness, and I think that's I'm susceptible to mental unhappiness myself, so it is not unlikely that it's in one point in the future I will I will be so unhappy that I think that the only way to make myself happy is to stop being a monk. I mean, it happens, right? So, we try sometimes to narrow it down to only one reason or, two reasons, and it's normally outside, but actually the reason is mental unhappiness. So then I think that, mental unhappiness that is affected or caused by different things, So here, when we say that my karma ran out of becoming a monk, well, we need to create the conditions for remaining monastics. This is our own personal responsibility, and it's not easy. Of course, there are many different things that work outside that that makes it difficult, and we have, to stay on top of things. But I think that when someone says, I think that the point is that when someone says that my karma ran out, well, it sounds as if it had nothing to do with them. It has to do with the karma, but actually we create the karma to remain monks or nuns through making sure that the mind is kept happy, and we keep the big picture in place. No, it's not easy. No, it's not easy, but
it's one thing that I'm just sort of a year into it, and the vows that we now keep, it's quite intense. That now I have all these vows I need to keep. We regularly break them. Even with trying to keep them, we still break them. And I guess just being aware of that now that we've got these vows, and being so aware that keeping your vows well is the cause for why you became ordained, that it is your life, the ante of just living has increased, because that's life. I've got to be more vigilant. I just can't accept, you can't do that now that you're ordained. You've got to be a bit more vigilant with everything. Really, I feel, and that is an aspect of a year down the track that I'm still really trying to wrap my head around, in just that vigilance and trying to have the best attitude that I can around all these new vows I now hold. And I think that even goes back to just taking refuge, taking pride in motion, like this has been incremental. So I'll just go in. It has been incremental, but the ante increases. The ante informs, the vows increase in the way they inform your behavior. That's the point. And this is very clear. With that first one, Yaki, with that ignoring, belittling, and not forgiving, and not helping those who have broken their moral discipline. And then it goes on and states the ways in which you have broken your moral discipline. You should, and then it ends with, you should generate compassion. So do you think that's just referring to just ordained people?
No, I think that it can also be taken, said with respect to someone not keeping the Bodhisattva vow, someone not keeping the lay vow, someone not keeping the tantric vow.
It always pertains to Buddhists then? It doesn't pertain to, like your Epstein's of the world and etc.?
Well, I think that the first part of this this secondary offense sense that towards someone with lapsed ethics on account of his or her having committed an act with no intervening period. So that refers to the 5 heinous actions. But I think that we can also extend it to those that behave in a really, in a negative way. I think that probably when you think of the absence of the world, or people that are in the prison system for having committed terrible things, it seems that pedophiles are people that are viled by everyone, at least here in Australia. It seems that kind of whenever you hear about pedophiles in the news, everyone goes on a run, kind of trying, wishing to everything bad to happen to the person. So so in that sense, I think that for someone that holds the Bodhisattva vow, we also have to train our mind to not fall into that way of thinking. Yeah, I mean, yeah, generate compassion. I mean, of course, it's not to say that we need to accept what they're saying, but as practitioners of compassion, no one should be excluded.
I guess that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah. Hmm. So Onyx is saying karma is inevitable and a law of nature. Is this a wrong view? Well, karma is a law of nature in the sense that if you create a cause, the result will arise when conditions are right for the result to arise. Karma is inevitable in the sense that if you don't purify it, you will experience the result of the action that you've created if conditions come together. But you can still play with those conditions, prevent them from coming together, or you can also purify previous accumulated karma. All right, let's look at the next one. Number 9 says, if you do not train like you hear in the Vinaya trainings in order to protect others' minds, it is a secondary offense of not training oneself so that others may develop faith. So I looked at 2 other commentaries to this secondary offense. Oops, sorry. It seems that what this commentary says that that you behave in a way that is contrary to what you need to train it. So, for example, you are a lay person, you've taken the lay vow. But I think that probably it's common in this environment, this society where you come from a non-Buddhist background, even a Christian background, let's say. You decided to become Buddhist, everyone around you knows that you're Buddhist. And in your behavior, you're still acting in a way that is unconscientious or reckless, which then makes people around you think that what's wrong with that person? They're not really practicing Buddhism, or if this is what they're practicing, then Buddhism is not a cool religion or a cool practice. So in that sense, you bring Buddhism into disrepute. I think that even more so as monastics, when you behave in a way that is reckless or unconscientious, rude, and so forth, where then people look at you and they lose faith in Buddhism or faith in the training. This is what this secondary offense is. Since this is the gist of this secondary offense. So there are a few points that we can think of. Let's look at that again. If you do not train like you hear in the Vinaya training in order to protect others' minds, it is a secondary offense of not training oneself so that others may develop faith. So you might be thinking that, for example, you have taken other ordination vow, and our ordination vow is coming from the Hinayana tradition. It's a Hinayana vow. Or you might be a lay practitioner. And you could be thinking that even if I don't keep my pratimoksha vow clean or pure, I'm still in possession of the Bodhisattva vow, so it's okay. No, it's not a big deal. So if you think about it like that, and others lose faith in the trainings because of your attitude, this is a misdeed. Thupten Chodron in her commentary, she says that also you might have, someone might ask you to talk about a certain point, and it's something that you normally don't pay attention to or you don't like. It's a practice that you don't really like. You're not really doing this practice, and you refuse to do it because you kind of say or think that this is not worthy. And because of that, others take offense, or they think they lose the faith in the Dharma. That is also a scenario that could play out in this secondary offense. So I think that altogether, if we act in a way that put people off, puts people off of the training, this is the secondary offense, number 9. Any questions?
What do they mean by a hera, Yaki?
What is the meaning of a hero? Well, a hero is a Hinayanist. So it says, if you do not train like a hero in the Vinaya training, so it says that if you don't train like a Hinayanist in your training in order to protect others, and you think that it's okay for me to do it because I'm training in the Bodhisattva practice.
So you're trying to be a bit above the Vijnana and going to the Mahayana, aren't you? So you sort of, would that be a sort of an error in pride as well, in sort of thinking that you're a bit above this Vijnana sort of stuff? You think that might be the part of the reason for this secondary offence?
I guess that it could be contextual, in a sense that you could be definitely if you think that I'm above the Hinayana training because I'm Mahayanist and I don't need to train in the things that Hinayanists train. This and because of that, you're criticized by others, or others think that, for example, the Mahayana tradition teaches reckless practices. Then I think that could qualify as that misdeed. I remember that when I was traveling in Burma, Myanmar, I was traveling in robes, and I felt all the time that I'm breaking the rules. It's like, to begin with, I didn't know exactly or very precisely what their code of conduct is. So although I tried to do whatever they do, like, for example, to abstain from eating after 11 o'clock or in the morning, and to abstain from riding motorbikes, bicycles, and so forth. Still, I did meet people along the way that kind of looked at me in the robes I was wearing, and they saw me as a representative of the Mahayana. So I think that in different ways they say, they thought that if I'm doing this and that, it means that I'm not a real monk, or this is not real Buddhism, or this. So in that sense, if you think that that's beyond me, that's above, that's below me. That's what she said. If whatever they do is below me because I'm a practitioner of the Mahayana and I act in a way that could be criticized by others, then I think that fits.
What about with the colour of your robes being one of the reasons they spotted you, or they have different colour? Are they sort of a yellow or robes they wear over there?
Oh, well, they wear different robes. Some of them, I think that many of them didn't really know what I was or what it is. They assumed that I'm a monk, but some of them knew. Some of them have those preconceived ideas about Tibetan Buddhism. They saw me. I had a conversation with a couple of monks who said that we assume that we can drink alcohol and get married and things like that. Yeah, we can have...
They assumed you could do those things, did they?
Sorry?
They assumed that you could do those sorts of things, did they?
Yeah.
Ah.
So that was one of the things I was avoiding in Myanmar, drinking.
What, getting married and drinking alcohol?
Yeah, getting married.
What about their monks? Were they drinking alcohol and getting married, or having affairs? Who knows?
That points to even more practicing good ethical conduct, not necessarily that it's going to take a while, but like Geshe-la says, that we keep our eyes open, wait about your eyes and contain yourself. All these sorts of things, to have a sense of being self-contained. And I think that's where that could come along, saying, oh, Mahayanas do, like, they're loose in many ways, right? Because they don't have that discipline. So I guess even more the reason why we need to maintain it.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, it's not, I've heard Robert Thurman, say that, you know, one reason why the monastic tradition really thrived in Tibet was when they gave up being a warring society. In other words, you know, they decided that Buddhism was going to be the way they operated, and so they decided that they no longer needed armies, so the armies then developed monastic traditions. So they became a monastic tradition. And my understanding is like that book that I gave you of the teacher in Holland. His father, or he told us, there's a story in there. Yeah, well, that's right. It was his father. His father was a monk, but then for some reason he disrobed because he had family responsibilities that he needed to address. And that wasn't, you know, and people, even though he was then lay after that, people still came to him and to perform monastic type things. You know, and the monastics, like, not only the monastic tradition of Tibet, not only were they scholars, but they were also administrators, and they were also cleaners. You know, so the monastic tradition in Tibet and the way it has developed to be such an integral part of their culture, I find absolutely fascinating. And there are a lot of misconceived perceptions come from that, you know, like they were loose. I don't think they were loose. Maybe some, you know, became disrobed for various reasons, but
well, I think probably you could say that different Asian countries have their own style of maintaining monastic discipline, you know, so they might be really tight on certain areas and more loose on other areas. You know, when you look at, for example, I think Thai and Burmese Buddhism, you know, at Bodh Gaya, I was at a guest house, and I had a couple of Burmese monks in the room in front of me, and they were, afternoon when they came back from the temple, they were just out on the balcony smoking. You know, and it's, but it's, no, it's acceptable in some forms of Burmese tradition, Myanmar tradition. It's not considered to be a transgression of the vow. I don't know. I wasn't on the balcony with them. No, so for them, this is not transgressing the vow, but, you know, of course, from a Tibetan Buddhist perspective, it is a big no-no. So, no, they have their own customs and interpretation of the vow. They're strict in one area, but not in other areas. So it's hard to say that.
Smoking grass or something, not just cigarettes. Is that
smoking cigarettes. I don't know.
Dope or anything like that they were doing.
What? Okay.
No,
anyway,
you don't say you're not going to. In your, that the monastic vow you take does include smoking cigarettes, does it?
Yes.
The monastic vow.
Well, the monastic vow, you know, in the Tibetan Buddhist interpretation, there's also no smoking. I think that also not only Tibetan Buddhists, also when you look at Chinese tradition, there is also no smoking. But I think that in other monastic traditions in Asia, you have different variations. Though I'm not mentioning it in order to say that there are too loose and there are too bad and so forth. I'm just saying that there are different interpretations of monastic tradition, and just because we don't like, or no, we think that this is not something that we do, it doesn't mean to say that this is not a valid monastic tradition. You know, they have their own interpretation of the vow. Some of the things are kept very strict. Some of the things they do different to us. You know, and the same thing applies to us. You know, so.
And also Christianity too. Yeah. You know, like the Catholics, they can drink and smoke. The Anglicans, they can drink and smoke. Then you get to the Protestants.
All right, enough with that. Smoking, yeah. Sorry for mentioning
that. Smoking, I was going to talk about.
Enough with that. Discussion is finished. Back on track. No, it's okay. Let's go to sleep. Another question is, if there is time, Geshe-la recommended his Honor's upcoming teaching on Chandrakirti's Madhyamika Avatara. do you recommend any translation or commentary available in English on the Madhyamika Avatara? There is the FPMT translation of the illumination of the thoughts. We need to check whether it is made available to the public. So that's a good, no, it's a good text, but in no way it is an easy text to read. Illumination of the thought. I think that any text on that is better digested with an explanation of the Lama. It's not like an easy bedtime reading. It's pretty hardcore. So Lama Tsongkhapa's presentation is supposed to be, making the Madhyamika Avatara text easier, but I think that it's pretty dense, and also I think that for us almost impossible to study it without getting a commentary from Igeshe. Now also we need to keep in mind that His Holiness is teaching it over 3 days in one session a day. So, it's going to teach the text where it's probably going to pull out a couple of verses, give a lot of transmission. So what commentaries are available in English? The best is Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary, but still it's a massive text. So we'll check whether it can be made available to the public. I think that Jeffrey Hopkins' meditation on emptiness or emptiness yoga also give a good presentation of this topic. I think that in one of them, Jeffrey Hopkins pulls quite a lot of quotations from Nagarjuna's Root of Wisdom and Chandrakirti's Madhyamika Avatara. All right, let's do some perfection of generosity points. So in Shantideva's text, chapter number 5, Getza Rinchen gives an introduction to the nature of the 6 perfections. So we'll cover that when we get to chapter number 5. But before that, I wanted to just pull out what he said about generosity. So while we're saying that, let's just look at the section that we started covering today. Where is it? Just a second. It's here. So as the last preparation for taking up the mind of enlightenment, we're creating more merit by training the mind that gives away body, material wealth, and roots of virtue. First of all, what we've covered today was training in the thought to give away body, material wealth, and roots of virtue, and aspiring for virtue to become a cause that does not go to waste. And the last point that we'll cover tomorrow is aspiring for virtue to become a cause for material resources, body, etc. So, training in the mind, in the thought to give away body, material wealth, and roots of virtue is training in the intention to give. So let's look at the perfection of generosity as explained by Getza Rinchen in chapter number 5. So it says that the virtuous intention to give and the actions of body and speech that it motivates. There are 3 types of generosity: material generosity, generosity of giving Dhamma, and generosity of giving fearlessness. So here it seems that in chapter number 3, in training in generosity that gives away body, possessions, and roots of virtue, the emphasis here is on material generosity. Still, it is training in the intention to give mainly, rather than practicing generosity and giving away things in a practical sense, because here in chapter number 3, we're training the mind in the intention to give, right? Then Lama Tsongkhapa in his Lamrim Chemo gave some more details with respect to the meaning of completing the perfection of generosity. So he said that it is not contingent on eliminating all the poverty of sentient beings, but it is increasing the intention to give to the point in which you have destroyed the stingy clinging to all that you own, your body, resources, and roots of virtue, and you completely condition your mind to give it in a way to living beings from the depth of your heart. And not only that, but also to giving others the effects of this giving as well. Pretty full on, isn't it? So I see Maggie, Yeshe.
Just reading the
Yeah.
words.
All right.
It's a big long sentence.
Yeah.
I'm trying to absorb it. I'm tired.
What page in that in the commentary? No, this is my own summary.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, this is my own summary, sorry. Well, I brought it, but I'll have it. Yeah. Yeah, that's the second volume of the Lamrim Shema. So, sorry. It's shorter than Amazon Kappa summary. Yeah. All right. Let's read it again. So, first of all, it is the virtuous intention to give. That's to begin with. So normally when we think of generosity, first thing that should come to mind is the intention to give, the thought of giving. But also we have the actions of body and speech that it motivates. But the main entity of the perfection of generosity is the intention to give. So there are three types of generosity: material generosity, in which you give material things to others. There is the generosity of giving the Dhamma, teaching to others, and generosity of giving fearlessness, which is protecting others from fear, right? So when you protect them, when you protect the life, or when you also protect them from different mental states, right? Mental harm and so forth, that could also be generosity of giving fearlessness. Those are the three types of generosity. Sometimes we speak about four types of generosity. We have also, in some texts, generosity of giving loving kindness. Treating others with sense of loving kindness is also considered to be generosity. I think that we said in the previous week that sometimes in English we speak about being generous with your time or being generous. Do we have other example of other ways of using the word generosity, which doesn't really cover generosity, material generosity, generosity of giving fearlessness, generosity of giving them.
Speech, in other words, just being positive about things, speaking kindly about people, highlighting their qualities. You know, that's all a way of being generosity of speech. There's a lot of generosity.
Yeah, so kind of in English, we have an idea of what generosity is. Sometimes we have to be creative and see if it actually, is it part of the intention to give? If I mean, here actually generosity of loving kindness, just being kind with others, it's not necessarily having the intention to give, but it's still considered to be.
Would include everything I probably just said then.
Yeah.
Generosity, being kind,
yeah.
Things like that, to be kind. And you know, I think generosity is giving people the benefit of the doubt, too, you know, rather than thinking negatively of them. Oh, you know, we're probably tired today, so you know.
Well, we have those. I think that in English we consider all those different attitudes as generous attitudes, and definitely they're positive attitudes. But sometimes we have to kind of think whether strictly do they fit into the perfection of generosity, or do we call them in English generosity? But from Buddhist perspective, they would fit under other categories rather than generosity.
Yeah, I was going to say, like one of speech, usually that fits into as an antidote to harsh words.
Yeah. I mean, it could also even fit within training in ethical discipline. You know, if it's an antidote to harsh speech, then antidote to it would be speaking positively about others, encouraging others, and so forth. You know, sometimes in this presentation of the 6 perfections in Lamson Kappa's presentation, but also in the illumination of the thought, there is a section that describes how you practice each one of the perfection within the 6 perfections. So you have, for example, the perfection of generosity. Within the perfection of generosity, you practice the 6 perfections. So you have the generosity of generosity, the ethics of generosity, practicing patience within generosity, joyous effort in generosity, absorption in generosity, and the perfection of wisdom within generosity. So each one of them has the practice of the other perfections included within that. So I think that this is where there is this crossover between them. So you can be generous with in English we say, you're being very generous in that you being very kind to others. You're praising the good qualities. You give them the benefit of the doubt. So in that sense, you can say that maybe this is linking in the practice of generosity into your practice of ethical discipline. So.
You lost me in that second. At the end of what you were saying, that generosity of absorption. Like, you know, those last few things around emptiness that you said you totally lost me there.
Well, so for example, practicing each of the perfections within the 6 perfections, you have, for example, practicing wisdom within giving. So we give away in being mindful of the emptiness of the 3 spheres. But also on top of that, there are other forms of wisdom that we can develop when we give, like, for example, knowing the distinction between what is to be given and what not to be given, when is the right time to give and what is the not the right time to give. So this is, all those different considerations are the practice of wisdom that is included within the practice of generosity. But mainly it is, when you think of the perfection of wisdom, it is mainly giving with being cognizant of the emptiness of the 3 spheres.
Did you say that the practice of Tonglen is generosity with absorption? If you're doing it in a single pointed way?
I think so, yeah. Yeah. No, so when you have, when you look at the way that Lama Tsongkhapa explains, sorry, not Lama Tsongkhapa, Shantideva explains here the way to cultivate absorption, and that will come in chapter number 8, then it speaks of equalizing, exchanging self with others as a way of practicing absorption. I mean, one thing that you can say in relation to his presentation is looking at how to how to reduce or abandon, avoid, counteract our imbalanced state of mind that gives rise to anger and attachment towards others. So first of all, balance that in order to make the practice of calm abiding be a potent practice. But also it in itself can be, equalizing, exchanging self with others, can also be practiced for absorption. And then Tonglen, which is an extension of equalizing, exchanging self with others, can also be practiced with an absorption. So if so you can develop absorption or concentration in which you send out and you gather back. Yeah.
I was also going to say, and then your motivation of that, generating that even-mindedness, you're doing that. You yourself attain that absorption. Beginning with that.
Is that equalizing self with others being a practice of absorption? Is it also a practice of generosity? Can it also be a practice of generosity?
Well, when I say it is a practice of absorption, you can practice it. You can practice absorption within that.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So the question is, equalizing, exchanging self with others, is it a practice of generosity? Is that you?
Yes. I guess not necessarily, because it's you can practice absorption within it doesn't mean it's automatically a practice of generosity. So I think you just answered the question in a roundabout.
Well, I think that when you look at different practices that we do, it's not that all of them can be fitted in either the perfection of generosity or the perfection of ethics or the perfection of patience and so forth. No, if you think of equalizing, exchanging self with others, where does it fit within the 6 perfections? Can it be fit into one of them?
Yes. Or the 2 accumulations too.
Well, first of all, it is equalizing, exchanging self with others. It is a practice for developing bodhicitta. Once you develop bodhicitta, you're training the 6 perfections. So you could say that this is actually the motivation for practicing the six perfections. So you create the motivation through equalizing, exchanging self with others. But you can also then say that even after you've developed bodhicitta, when you increase bodhicitta, you can practice generosity, for example. Now, so Sherab mentioned Tonglen, or giving and taking meditation, right? So this meditation is normally explained as an extension of equalizing, exchanging self with others. So we have this practice for developing bodhicitta, equalizing, exchanging self with others, and then in order to increase a sense of love to others, we then give away whatever we have, and we take away all this, for the sake of their happiness, and take away all the pain and suffering. So that's even increases the love and compassion and the mind of enlightenment that we develop in relation to all sentient beings. So it's normally explained in relation to that, but I think that we can also practice it as a standalone meditation, because it's such a profound meditation. But overall, the goal of this meditation is to increase our care for others, to the point in which, if you can, if you get to the point where you can do something for the sake of others, even if it comes at a cost of at a great cost, you'd be willingly do that. Geshe Jamin used to say, and that's before we leave it here for today, he says that also you have to be careful about your attitude with respect to your practice, in the sense that when we think of our body currently, our body is so feeble, it's so poor that, if you give it up for the sake of others, you might be able to benefit one being or two beings or three beings. But if you think of using this body in order to develop a mind that later on will be able to be of benefit to so many other sentient beings, then you need to take care of your body and not just waste it on things that are not too significant at the great scheme of things. So you have to see to balance out the priorities, right? Long-term priorities and short-term priorities. So we first of all train a mind in giving. So on a mental level, we think that I am giving away my body to all sentient beings. And the idea is to develop the willingness to do that. If there was a situation, if we will encounter a situation where our body would be in lieu of so many other sentient beings suffering, we'll happily give it up. In practicality, it is likely not to happen to most of us now in this life, or maybe in future lifetimes, many future lifetimes. Probably those situations where we really have to give away our body for the sake of so many living beings, probably just a few situations, but we still need to train our mind in the willingness to be able to do that. All right, let's leave it here for now. Still need to pick my car from the mechanic.
Thank you.
No worries, thank you. All right. Gewadi nyududa lama sangye dugyune jowa chikyama lupa de sala gopa sho chanchu semcho rinpo make panda kye gyuchi keban yamba me payam gone gondo pewa sho kanri rawe kowe shinkam de pendan de wa malu chowen chere siwan tenzin yatsoi shape site baudu tengyochi tu tsu chan xin jang gung gyao ten zin kyong pen we kum so do po cho sung ko we le mun tu tu pa da so du je kon du sha ten shu. Thank you. Ta ta da da.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Maybe see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
See you tomorrow. Ta ta.
Thanks. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.